Okay, so let's get into it. Today, as I said, we're going to have a look at library management. It seems that in the last hot fix update to ArchiCAD 21, and it looks like from 22 onwards as well, there is sort of a different system of handling our libraries in Teamwork. It doesn't seem to have changed in like a normal file, but once you're working in Teamwork, it's changed slightly. And the main difference being that it seems that you can't actually load a library from outside of the server, like a cloud server. So whereas before you could have a mixture of BIM cloud or BIM server libraries and local libraries, now you seem to be restricted to just server libraries. So sort of the basics of starting up with our libraries is once we've got our file open, this is just an empty file for now, so we'll just have a look at the library part. We won't worry too much about anything else. So files, libraries and objects, and library manager is generally your starting point. What you'll see here is in this file we've got an embedded library, or I think in Finnish it sort of translates something like inside library or something like that. Our AW2 custom library and Chiasto 21, which is the basic ArchiCAD library issue that comes when you load ArchiCAD onto your system. And so what our aim is to only basically have 3 libraries here, excluding the embedded library. There's just no way you can take that away, it's always there. So when you have a project, you should be looking to have basically the Chiasto 21 library, which will provide all of the latest ArchiCAD objects that work with 21. You should load the AW2 custom library, so that's sort of library parts that are specific to what we use for develop for ourselves. And then the third one, you should have a project specific library. And I'll just try and make this one. So whatever project you are, we would have a library specifically for that. So that's where we would then put sort of project specific parts as well. So as you go through a project and we develop library parts, some of them will be specifically for one job, some will be able to use elsewhere. So if it's a library part that can be used more than just this project, well, we can put it in the AW2 custom library. If not, we'll load it into the project library. So on this one here, I now want to load myself a project library since I haven't got one. If I reserve the library manager, I go add. So at the moment, I've only got a selection of libraries from either the BIM Cloud Basic or BIM Cloud. I can't go anywhere else. I can log into different BIM Clouds or BIM Cloud Basic settings, but I can't now just go off to my C drive and load Antonino's special library or Timo's secret library or anything like that. It's straight off the server now. So if the library that you want is not there, we need to then go down here and manage server libraries, if you have the rights. If you can't do any of this, well then you need to go and ask someone who can. So at least you know where everything is. So now I want to upload a library. So if I go upload, and I think where I saved my library. No. So what I've done is I've created a library up here called BIM Jedi Library, and I've sort of got some subfolders in here so we can classify and store various bits and pieces in some sort of order. And you'll notice down here I've also got this IFC import libraries. Now this is another one that we would like people to remember, because importing IFCs can cause all sorts of problems if you don't do it right. So when you do import or update an IFC, it will ask you where you want to save the library. If you don't actively go in and tell it where you want to save it, it will put it in the embedded library, the inside library. So we don't want that, because that just causes us a nightmare. So you should have somewhere, preferably within your project library, an IFC import library, so that we can then store all the LCF files that the IFC import creates. So if I cancel out of that, upload. So I want to go back to the root library here. So I want to upload this BIM Jedi library. So I choose, and that's currently loading up to the server. One thing too to keep in mind too, when we were talking about IFC libraries before, I know how frustrating it can be sometimes when you update hot links, IFCs, or import them as well, and how sometimes it seems like your computer's sitting there forever, just doing nothing, and how after a while you end up sort of crashing the program and starting again. Or I've done it myself. I did it this morning, but I actually went in this morning and had a look what was actually happening. And when we input an IFC or update an IFC that's already in there, what it does is it goes through the IFC. There's every single item in that IFC file is an object. So it doesn't matter if it's got 500 of the same light fitting. That's 500 objects that the IFC is going to create. So you think of a SACO or an LVI file with in one of these hospitals and how many pieces are in it. So what it's doing is it's actually going back to the place where you've told it to store the library, and it's creating, it creates a folder, a subfolder for that IFC, and which is basically the name of the IFC plus the date stamp and time stamp. And then it goes through and it creates every object in that file, puts it into that library, and you can actually see it updating, because you can go through and you can go to the bottom of the list and pull the file up, and then a second later there's 5 more, and so it does take time. So it is actually happening. So don't be too tempted just to crash out all the time. Maybe my suggestion would be go into your library to where you've told it that it's saving, and just see that it is actually doing something. So look for that IFC import folder, and there'll be a folder with the name. And once it's created all those files and all those objects, it then turns that whole folder into a library container file, so an LCF file, so it's nice and compact and can upload easily to our server. This seems to be going slow, so what I might do is I'll stop that. Yep, I might just try and load a smaller one. Did it do anything? No, so it hasn't created anything. So here, so what I'll do is I'll just go back and I will just load. I'll just load this one for now. I'll give it a different name. So hopefully that's going to load. seems to be taking forever as well, so we'll just pull out of that one for now. So once you load your library, close out of that. Oh, come on. So once you load your library, you can then carry on and do whatever you want. And then you've got to keep in mind that through the project, if you want to create or add some new library parts, it's very tempting sometimes just to go into the library manager here. And, not embedded, sorry. Sometimes it's very tempting just to come into here and add your new library part, because it means you can get on with the job quickly. You can put it in there and then use it and carry on. But due to this new system of having to manage the files sort of from the server and update them from the server, it's best to put them in the folder on our own server. So don't upload them directly to ArchiCAD or the BIM cloud. Go and put them in the correct folder in our library or on our server. So then once you have added or removed or edited whatever library parts from your particular library, you can then come in here and you can then manage your libraries from here. So you can manage BIM Cloud, BIM Server libraries. And just say, so here's my Ratamol library. So I want to now update that. So I can update from, and it will ask me where I want to go to get that from. So if I come back here to correct library folder, I can grab that and choose, and now that's going to scan my server file and work out what's different, and then bring everything back up to the BIM Cloud server. So it will then remove anything that's deleted out of the other one and change anything that's changed and add anything that's added. So the risk here is if you have gone through and added library parts directly to the BIM Cloud server, is that when this update is done, it then doesn't know that you've put them there. It will overwrite the whole folder, so you sort of could lose objects. So it's best to put them on our server and then always everyone do it the same way. And then once you've done that, taking a while as well. Once you've done that, then you just need to go and reload your libraries in your project. So just through basically the library manager. So library manager, libraries, and then click that little renew button, and it will just check the server library and make sure that one on your computer now matches what's on the server. So you can then go on your merry way. And sometimes too, I've noticed that if you do an update here, once you get out of it, it will say that your library doesn't match the server library anymore. Do you want to synchronize them? So it will then synchronize with the server library, and you can then carry on once that's done. So hopefully that is giving you a basic insight how to look after your libraries and what to look for if you get some strange messages. I know in the last few weeks there have been some funny things go on, and I think looking back now, it's all to do with just this change in system and some people not knowing what's been going on and doing some funny things for the library. So And one other thing too to keep in mind is I did mention there about the embedded library. Now our goal is to actually have nothing in the embedded library. Especially, it's a real pain if we are hot linking lots of files and all these files have got little embedded library parts because they come into the main library and then they start creating duplicates and stuff like that. And if you have, I've noticed in some projects, even on one that we're working on now, is where a file has been hot linked numerous times into the project, and that the hot linked file has some strange objects in its embedded library. It gets actually brought in to the library, or the master embedded library of the main file, every time that it's imported. Okay, so I don't need to do that. So by making sure that your embedded libraries are clean, then you can help us, the big files, to keep them clean as well. So it would be a challenge this week to sort of go on, and if you are working on a file, go and have a look in the embedded library, see what's actually in there, see what's being used and what's useful, and what is just rubbish that's come from some other previous file, depending on where the file's been opened up. You can take anything that's like project specific and put it in your project library. Again, that's not a big issue. Where are we? Libraries, library manager. Let's put anything in it. No, this one's unfortunately empty. But all you would need to do is, there's something odd here. So you can then grab those objects out of your embedded, if they're useful, and then export them to a local folder. So then you can,
But where are they physically now? In your ArchiCAD library?
If they're the embedded library, they'll be in the file on the server. Yeah, but sort of the more times we link and the more times we add rubbish into the file, it all adds to that processing time, thinking, and sitting there waiting. So if I just give this, I'll export a new folder. Okay. So I could have actually exported those to my project folder, and then next time I did an update, they would then come back into the project in the right place. So I'd sort of encourage you all to have a look at your files and see that. Also, have a look at your files and see what libraries are actually loaded. I went into a file yesterday that had 10 or 11 libraries loaded. Some of them were, I'm pretty sure, duplicates, or they would have duplicated parts. Others were just little manufacturers' libraries and stuff like that. So it just makes it hard to manage. And if you are still, say, in version 20 and working on an older project, the libraries are more local than what they do now on 21, where the libraries are all server-based. So prior to this last hotfix, the libraries actually sat on a cache on your machine. So, or you would also access libraries on your machine too. So you could access the ArchiCAD 21 library, the Chiasto 21, from your own machine or from the server. So if you've got it loading from your own machine, but you've made some changes somehow and that you've deleted parts or whatever, or added parts, well, then it will cause confusion if, say, a part that you've added to that library a year or so ago has been then used in a project, but the other guys don't have the same Chiasto 21. They have the shop issued one. So then it will show up as a dot in their project. So Just because the projects, the libraries have got the same names doesn't actually mean they are the same library, unless they've come from the same place. So there's something to keep in mind just on those, 20 and backwards. And also on like a PLN file. If you're working on a standard non-teamwork file, it's going to be the same. So your libraries will be local, so they'll come from either they'll either come from your computer, or if you've told it to go to the BIM server, they'll come from there. But anything that's come from local, even if it looks the same, you've called it the same as what Timo has or what Mika has on his machine. If either of you have played around with your own libraries and refined them to make them better for you, then it causes problems for someone else logging into that file later on or doing stuff like that. So yeah, just really important to keep those libraries clean and systematic. So so thanks for coming along today, and we'll catch you next week. Cheers.
There's going to be one more library which will release with Marcus.